12:09 a.m. There's got to be something wrong with me. I mean, seriously. I'm 22 years old and still afraid of the dark. I'm not a little kid anymore, but I can't work up the courage to just turn off the lights and go to sleep. Okay, let me explain how I came to this. One minute, I was enjoying myself, writing a paper on Paleolithic cave paintings for my art history class. And then without warning, I imagined that there was something spooky waiting for me in the hallway of my apartment, effectively trapping myself in my own bedroom. You see, I did more than just creep myself out, because with me, fear has a tendency to spiral out of control into levels of mind-boggling stupidity. At first, I just ignored it, going on with my works in the hopes that the feeling of being stalked would go away on its own. It didn't, and I was starting to worry that some shrieking terror was about to burst through the door, so I had to double-check to make sure that it was securely locked. After that, I couldn't concentrate on getting my paper written, as every other minute I'd have to look away from my monitor to see if the door was still closed. This is getting retarded, I said out loud to no one in particular. It's just my imagination fucking with me. Which is, honestly, the truth here. I know that if I were to open that door and look into the hall, nothing would happen. One single action and poof, sanity becomes restored. The problem, of course, is the actual opening part. That's always when the anxiety reaches its high point. This bullshit started about 30 minutes ago, just before midnight, and it doesn't look like it's about to let up anytime soon. So yeah, I'm stuck in my bedroom for what seems like the 100th time, alone with my computer and thoughts of strange boogeymen. And actually, this whole thing got me wondering where these irrational paranoid delusions first started. And that's an interesting story, actually. And it happened long before anyone could call me crazy. There's something in the basement. This story happened in the spring of 1998 in the old house on Erie Street that my parents were renting. Erie as in Lake Erie, but yeah, I mean, kind of a weird coincidence, right? Anyway, I was 6 years old at the time, so I was at a point in my life where sleeping with a nightlight was still considered normal. I think that we had only been living there for, I don't know, a few weeks. It's kind of hard to remember for sure exactly, but I do remember the first time my dad took me and my brother to check out the basement. Now, the house itself was well over 100 years old, and in a previous lifetime it served as a train station. The basement, as it turned out, was used as a temporary jail cell where the town sheriff would keep the criminals he caught trying to catch a ride out to Chicago. And in the time between them and when my family moved in, no one had thought to update the basement. Basically, it was a dungeon. The walls were made out of carved rocks or something, with certain areas bricked over from where the groundwater had been leaking through. Also, the whole place was coated in layers of spider webs and dead insects. But that's not even the creepiest part. In the way back around a narrow corner was a heavy door labeled Milker Room, whatever that meant. In any case, my dad couldn't get it opened, even with a crowbar. The hinges were so rusted and caked in calcium that nothing short of a jackhammer was going to get through it. During the daylight hours, I didn't worry about the basement or the cryptic Milker Room. I just avoided going down there. But at night, I couldn't help thinking about it. And invariably, I'd end up hiding under my sheets until I could eventually fall asleep. Of course, I wasn't always able to fall asleep. Sometimes the voices would keep me wide-eyed and alert. And when I say voices, I mean what I thought constituted the sound of a man's muffled speech coming from the cellar. To me, it sounded like someone under the floorboards was mumbling incoherently. And the reality here, of course, was that the sounds were bouncing around the air vents in such a way as to trick my little kid brain into thinking there really was someone down there, trapped behind that huge, immovable door, trying to get out in order to, well, I'm not sure exactly. Perhaps I thought he wanted to eat me, I guess. Who knows? I was 6, remember? It doesn't matter what I thought this made-up man wanted. All I knew at the time was that it was bad. And it got worse when my older brother Joshua kept telling me that he knew what was really in the basement. He was a sadistic asshole. And he thought it was just so damn funny to tell me that a monster with a woman's face and a body covered in tufts of fur was trying to escape from the milker room. And let me repeat that. A woman's face and a body covered in tufts of fur. Yeah. It was weeks before I could sleep a full night without yelling for my parents to rush to my room. Alright, let's move on a few years. When I was 9, my parents had decided to move to a better house for commuting reasons. I was helping my dad move some boxes out of the basement, and at this point the place had been cleaned up a great deal, and being 3 years older, I didn't find the basement all that scary. Until I found myself alone down there while my dad ran off to talk to my mom about something. At first, I was fine. But then out of nowhere, I started to hear this weird tapping noise. I remember looking around for what was causing it, more annoyed than frightened, when I looked around the corner towards the milker room. It started getting louder, and it was coming from behind the huge black door, and I didn't move for what felt like hours. I was petrified when all of a sudden I heard a crashing bang come from where the tapping used to be. I shrieked and started running back towards the stairs, nearly knocking over my dad in the process. When he asked me what was wrong, I told him about the noises coming from the milker room. He laughed. I swear, he laughed and told me to follow him. Going around the corner, my dad walked right towards the milker room door, opened it, flicked on the lights, and showed me the loudest water softener in the world. He told me that he had installed it 2 years ago because he was sick of drinking rust-flavored water, and the milker room was the best place in the house to put it. How'd he get it open in the first place? And well, a lot of hardware stores sell solvents designed specifically for rust and calcium. I had nothing to be afraid of, never really did, but to this day I can remember with perfect clarity that one single moment of pure terror, where I was absolutely sure that something terrible lurked behind a few inches of wood and shadows. 12:42 a.m. So the point of that story was to remind myself that there's nothing evil waiting for me outside of my bedroom. And I don't think it worked. I tried to open it about a minute ago to use the bathroom, but the second I placed my hand around the doorknob, my heart started racing like I had just pounded 6 shots of espresso. Images of a writhing mass of rot and flies filled my mind, or of a black hound waiting to pounce from the darkness. And I'm freaking out a little inside, because not only do I have a feeling that there's something out there, but also the sense of whatever it is, it knows that I'm scared. I keep telling myself that it's all in my head, that I'm just projecting my fears into the environment. But it's not working, which is a shame because I know firsthand how frightened one's own imagination can be. So, here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to pee in the beer bottle I found in my trash can. And second, I'm going to write down another story. One where I had to go toe-to-toe with my own nocturnal demons. Sleep paralysis. About 4 years ago, I was trapped in a state of almost near total depression. I just graduated from high school, but my grades were so low that my choices for college were very much limited to the first place that accepts me category. Add to this that I was unemployed. My best friend had already left the state, and my parents were in the process of getting a divorce. In hindsight, I handled the whole situation in an extremely immature way by smoking a ridiculous amount of weed and barricading myself into my room to play video games all damn day. In other words, I was starting to turn into a complete loser. Now, some schools of thought suggest that nightmares serve as a subconscious mechanism to resolve perceived stressors. If this is true, then I was lucky that things hadn't started to get strange earlier. So one night, after a long, hard day of bong hits and masturbation, I fell asleep just as I always had. Except this time, I woke up right in the middle of things. And by that, I mean my brain woke up while the rest of me kept right on sleeping. I would later discover that this phenomenon was called sleep paralysis, which occurs when a person wakes up during the middle of the REM cycle, cannot move his or her limbs due to the sympathetic nervous system having shut down muscle control. You know, in order to keep the person from hurting themselves while they dream, pretty much. The experience is known to cause feelings of being choked or a sense of panic, and is often accompanied by hallucinations. Needless to say, I didn't like it one damn bit. I couldn't open my eyes, I couldn't move my arms, and I started to feel a sort of presence enter my room. I wanted to scream, but couldn't, and the entity was surrounding me, just observing me and judging me. I didn't know what it was, but somehow the thought got into my head that it wanted to hurt me. I struggled to break free, yelling at myself internally to wake up before it got any closer, but I couldn't move so much as a finger. And then I felt a pressure or tightness on my chest, like the life was being crushed out of me by something huge and angry. If someone were to try to read my thoughts at this point, all they would hear would be the sounds of a wild animal backed into a corner, vicious and scared, borderlining madness. Right when I thought that I was about to die, I heard myself scream, "Wake up!" Whether from inside or out, I don't know, but suddenly I bolted upright in bed, feeling very dazed and tired. I looked around my room, looking for whatever it was that was trying to kill me, but everything seemed fine. So I decided to get a glass of water. Almost immediately after getting out from beneath the covers, I started to hear a very deep, almost painful moan coming from the hallway outside of my bedroom, followed by a thud and footsteps. At this point, I was more angry than scared, so I grabbed the baseball bat and moved towards the door. I didn't rush out into the hall immediately, because by now it was slamming itself against my door, trying to get in, all the while its moans sounding more and more like it was in a state of constant agony. Eventually, I heard it start to shuffle away. So fast as lightning, I threw open the door and rushed into the hall. And that's when I saw it. It was very, very tall. So tall that it had to crouch a little to avoid the ceiling. Also, it was thin, more bone than flesh. It didn't have arms or skin, or even a face, really. I suppose that the best description here would be that it was an elongated skeleton wearing a straitjacket made of bacon. Whatever it was, it had turned around and was beginning to shuffle towards me. So I ran forward, swinging my bat like a madman, until it had stopped moving, gurgling in a puddle of its own blood. I woke up the next morning around dawn, laying face down on the hallway carpet next to my bat. Apparently I dreamed the whole encounter, and now there was a hole in the wall from where my bat had punched out a chunk. I haven't had a case of sleep paralysis since, nor did I ever witness the bacon monster again. But it just goes to show what sort of nightmares my own brain is able to conjure. 1:38 a.m. Well, that clearly didn't help. No, I'm not worried about the bacon demon hiding out there. I already stomped his bitch ass into the ground. But I'm still unable to just open the door. I can't sleep if I think there's something out there. I can't force myself to stay awake until sunrise either. I really don't have a clue here. Shit, I just pulled a neck muscle from turning my head too fast. I thought I saw something moving in the corner of my eye. It was just a shoe. An unmoving, unlaced, dirty whore of a shoe. Okay, enough screwing around. I just found a hammer. I wish I had a shotgun, but I guess a hammer will have to do. I'm going to try opening the door again. I'll be back in a minute. 1:39 a.m. Nope, not going to happen. I started sweating before I could even touch the handle. I tried, I really tried, but it was too much. Even worse, now I'm hearing noises coming from outside my window. Good thing the blinds are closed. I wish my roommate would just come back already. He works a late shift, so he usually doesn't get home until around 5 in the morning. Wait, hold on, that's only like another 3.5 hours or so. Yeah. I'll just wait for him to get off work and then I can finally put this nonsense behind me. Then again, it's not such a great idea to have too much faith in your friends, especially when they know just how easily you could be startled. Like my friend Stephanie, who decided to tell me one of her own horror stories just as I was about to head home for the night. The Union Street Cemetery. The Union Street Cemetery is the oldest graveyard in town. It's also the shittiest. Over the years, a combination of vandalism, poor upkeep, and harsh weather have made the headstones virtually unreadable. And the surrounding patches of grass that haven't been overrun by weeds are a sickly yellow color, similar to bile. The cemetery itself sits squarely on top of a slight hill, and despite the fact that it's been there for ages, most people in town don't even know where it is, if they even know that it exists at all. This might have something to do with the fact that the entire area surrounding the Union Street Cemetery has been unofficially designated as the town ghetto. In other words, the houses in that area are made homes by the lower income families. My friend Stephanie was one of them for a while. When Stephanie was in her early 20s, she led the glorious life of a single mother working as many hours as possible as a diner waitress. And in order to survive, she had to move herself and her 4-year-old son into a house on Union Street with 2 roommates. Or maybe she wasn't single at this point. Doesn't matter. I'm a little fuzzy on the details here, but I do know that she lived in one of the Union Street houses with her son. That's all we really need to know. Anyway, so this story, as told by Stephanie, was that one night while her husband/boyfriend roommates were all out of the house, Stephanie was in the kitchen trying to make some dinner while her son played in the living room. Now, her son, Tyler, at least I think his name was Tyler. Anyway, he was being loud as usual, banging toy trucks into each other like little boys are known to do. So naturally, Stephanie became worried when everything got quiet. When she walked into the living room to see if Tyler was doing all right, she saw him looking out of the front window from in between the curtains and the glass pane. Keep in mind that their house was right across the street from the cemetery. What you looking at, Tyler?" she asked. "They're coming over," he responded, still looking out the window. "Oh, well, who's coming over, Tyler?" "The people from across the street," he said. It was here that Stephanie looked out of the front window, expecting to see actual people, but instead saw only gates to the graveyard. Now, Stephanie isn't some dumb bimbo from a cheesy zombie movie. She's a real person, and like most people in real life, she's seen her fair share of horror films. She wasn't going to shrug this off as just another child saying strange things. She was going to get the hell out of there, which she did. Stephanie grabbed Tyler, an overnight bag, and spent the night at her mother's house. She returned the next morning after whoever else lived there had told her that everything was fine, that the walls weren't bleeding or anything else even remotely supernatural. Even still, Stephanie moved out of that house within a year. She told me this story one night just before I was about to leave my ex-girlfriend's house. Stephanie was a good friend of my ex's. That's how I came to know her. So I was a little more than nervous to walk home alone in the dark. Actually, it really wasn't a big deal until her story ran through my head when I was about halfway home, which got me wondering just where I was exactly in position to Union Street Cemetery so that I could plan my walk in order to avoid it. I remember thinking that I was pretty close to Union Street, so I stopped walking briefly to try to locate any notable landmarks. I was trying to look over a hill when it happened. At the worst possible moment, the clouds parted enough so that some faint moonlight outlined the silhouettes of several headstones resting on top of the hill. As it would turn out, I was facing the back side of the graveyard, standing so close that I could have thrown a rock over the fence without even trying. Of course, I freaked out. I honestly didn't realize just how close I was to the cemetery. It was just that dark. I turned and ran without looking back. I didn't stop running until I had reached the highway. 2:57 a.m. I'm not going to get out of this room tonight. I just can't do it. There's something terrible out there. Not just in the hall, but also outside my window, staring from behind the blinds, just waiting for me to let it in. I've been gripping the handle of my hammer so hard for so long that I know every groove in the carved wood better than I know my own face. The light bulb of my desk lamp blew out about 15 minutes ago, so now the only source of light is what little comes from the screen. I'm starting to think that it's already gotten in here. Yeah. Yes, it is. It's definitely in here. Maybe it's always been in here. With me. I can't face the darkness. That's how it gets you. It only becomes real if you look at it, even if just for a moment. It will flicker to life like a movie reel that skips a frame. There for a heartbeat, and then gone. But that's all it wants. It's all it ever wanted. It will blink into existence for only a fraction of a second, but the damage will last forever. Where do you think these stories come from? They're just the fallout of what I'm trying to forget. Something that doesn't want to be forgotten. I'm not going to let it get to me again. It only becomes real if you look at it, so I won't. I'll just keep my eyes on the screen, and I'll try to ignore the shapes moving around the edges of my vision. I'll be fine as long as I'm looking at the screen. Because it only becomes real if you look at it. It's only real when it looks back.